warning in advance, I was slightly thrown into this. I thought there was another talk coming before I did this. So yeah, today I'm talking about video games that I can play with someone who's not so proficient at video games, which in this case is my girlfriend, Tilly. Basically, she's not very good at video games, but because I do video games for a living, she's kind of got wrapped up into this thing of, oh, I should probably play some video games. So we tried playing a lot of video games together over the years, and we've had varying levels of success with them. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about some of the games that get rid of some of the barriers that prevent some people who want to get into video games but can't, some of those barriers, and gets rid of them and lets you play games. So multiplayer games. Differing levels of literacy can mean difficulty finding games you'll be able to be evenly matched at. This is one of the big problems if you're someone that plays a lot of video games and wants to play competitive games with someone that's not very good at them is, you know, skill barriers mean that you will probably keep winning and the other person will keep losing and it won't be much fun. So finding multiplayer games that are competitive, that you can be on an equal playing field with, is quite difficult. There's also games that make failure fun is another avenue for multiplayer competitive games. Games where, even if you're losing, it is still fun to be losing. So I'm going to talk about some of those. And the other one, which is cooperative multiplayer, where you can work together towards common goals. So first up is Octodad. Octodad is this slightly ridiculous game where if any of you haven't played it or seen it, you play as an octopus dressed up as a human who has successfully convinced the world that he's a human and that nobody has noticed that that is not human. Octodad can be played single player, and it is a game that is designed to be hard, deliberately obtuse to control. You're trying to control all these independent limbs. It's not very easy. You will fall over and you will make a mess of everything. Why that's really fun as a multiplayer game to play with someone who's not very good at games is A, anyone who plays this game is going to suck at it at first, and it's fun to suck at this game. You will fall over, you will knock stuff over, it will be absurd that no one has realized you're not a human. And when everyone's as bad as each other at the game, that's a really good equalizing thing when playing a game together. In terms of Octodad as a multiplayer game, what you can do is you can play Octodad by splitting the control of the limbs between two players. So one person is the left-hand side of this octopus body, and the other person's the right. What this means is that not only are you sort of halving the amount of controls that someone has to do, it's a game that's already it's already silly that you won't be able to control what you're doing. It becomes a bit of a three-legged race situation. You're going to fall over even more. And then secretly, the good thing about this game as a competitive, as a cooperative game to play with someone who's not very good at games, is that the person who's good at games can drag half of that body across the map pretty effectively, and it's not obvious that they're dragging the person along. So, as nicely as possible, you can drag someone through that game and it won't be obvious that you're not working together. So, I'm really sorry if you end up watching this, Tilly. When we played, I did kind of drag you through that game, but it's fine, you didn't notice. So, other games for multiplayer, what have we got? Mario Kart. A lot of people complain about Mario Kart who are competitive people at video games because a lot of the way that game, as it's standardly designed, is unfair. It's not a fair game. You'll be in first place and suddenly it's oh, someone got the blue shell and now you're in 8th place. And there is a lot of things about this game that are luck-based and that will completely overdo any skill that you've built up. Now, I completely understand why that's annoying. As someone who used to play this as a primarily single-player game or as a multiplayer game with other people who are very proficient at games, it was irritating when I lost first place because of a mistimed shell or something. But what's really important about that is it's a really great equalizer for people who aren't great at games. When you're playing through a round of Mario Kart and you might be in last place and get an item that throws you to first, at any point victory feels achievable even if you're not playing as well as the other people you're playing with. And that's a really nice thing because it means that if you're playing with someone and there is a difficulty, a skill gap between the two of you, that doesn't mean that you're always going to have the same winner and loser, and that's a really nice thing, and it means that you can still have fun even if you've got different levels of skill. So Next up, Starwall, just the tip. In terms of competitive multiplayer, yeah. Yeah, this is a game where you play neon space narwhals trying to stab each other in the heart. Again, this follows some of the same themes as to why I liked playing together with my girlfriend on Octodad, which is that, like, and this is just a competitive version of that. It's a very difficult game to control. All of the controls are overly sensitive. So you make a small movement and your nose goes back and forth across the place and you're sort of flopping about the map, never really in control of what you're doing, but liking to think you're in control. And again, that's a really nice equalizer when, like, no matter how good you are at this game, there will be times where, like, you are not going to be able to do what you're trying to do. And that is a really great equalizer for competitive play between two people who've got differing skill barriers. So yeah, it's another one that's just very nice to play with someone that, like, it evens that barrier of skill and core literacy with the genre. So I think this is the last one. Last multiplayer game I'm going to talk about is Thomas Was Alone, and this might seem like an odd one because it's not a multiplayer game. Yeah, I know, very weird to put it in the multiplayer category. Reason I've put it in there is that when me and my partner first played through Thomas Was Alone, we played through this entirely as a co-op game. And I'm bringing this up because video games are complicated. There's a lot of things you've got to do at times, and sometimes for people that don't have that core literacy with the genre, they can be difficult to play through. What we did with Thomas Was Alone is my girlfriend was playing through it. She really enjoyed the story. She was getting really engaged, and she started getting stuck with some of the getting some of the mechanics of what she had to be doing. And we split up the controls. So we split up movement left and right, jumping, and switching between characters. And we split that into sort of even parts, and we played through it as a co-op game. And the reason I bring it up is that, like, sometimes there are ways you can do things like this, where if there is a game that someone wants to be playing and is struggling to keep on top of all of the controls they've got to be doing at once, it's not always that hard to split it up and to work through something together and to split up, like, the different parts that make up that set of mechanics. So this is a game we really enjoyed playing together, and we played it as a co-op game, even though it's single, because that made it easier to go through, so woo. Now, single-player games, I'm going to try and go through this quickly. Some of the things that you need to pay attention to when introducing new people to single-player games is trying to find games that minimize the layers of literacy required to get from the start to the end, games that prioritize understanding over execution, games where narrative's strong enough to push through difficult mechanics, and games with simple difficulty curves. Blah, 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 fairly predictable stuff. So I will go on to my first example, which is Broken Age Act 1. Broken Age Act 1 is it's the first half of a narrative, but it is a point-and-click adventure game. And the reason I bring this up is point-and-click adventures are really good at having very simple mechanics, but difficult, like, understanding levels, where the challenge is understanding the world and what you've got to do within it, but once you know what you want to do, it's very simple to act out. Like, it might be a case of, okay, well, I've got these items and I need to work out how to put a ladder on this cloud without it going through them. What do I have in my inventory? And once you've worked out what your solution is, like, you can discuss with other people, you can, like, play through it cooperatively, but once you've discovered what your solution is, it is just a case of click on the things, click where you want them to go, and they're done. And that's a really important thing, is that, like, games that are like this, where it's just a simple set of actions you have to put out, but, like, the actual challenge is in working out what you want to do, they're really easy for people who want to get into games to start off with. So, like, yeah. Right, Gone Home. Gone Home is another one I want to bring up, just because, like, 3D camera movement in video games can be really hard for people who haven't grown up with it to get the hang of. A lot of games that have 3D camera movement are very fast-paced and require you to learn that skill in a very time-sensitive manner. You've got things like first-person shooters, all other sorts of, like, combat-heavy genres where you have to very quickly understand how to move that camera and constantly keep aware of what's going on. What's really good with something like Gone Home as a game for learning 3D camera control is there is no challenge that is time sensitive. You always have as much time as you want to slowly look around an area, understand what's going on in that area, decide where you want to look, slowly get yourself lined up right, and then move over to it. Like, because of the fact that there is nothing time sensitive in any of the interactions within Gone Home, it is a really good environment for someone to be able to just slowly learn to get to grips with those controls. And like, that's a really valuable thing, because 3D camera controls are really hard if you haven't grown up with them. It is not easy to teach someone how a 3D camera control works when they're being shot at repeatedly. Next up, Mass Effect. And the reason I bring up Mass Effect is to kind of talk about something that, like, this has been mentioned in some regards in some other talks that I've seen. And Mass Effect is a game that is hard to play. Like, if you are not used to video games, the shooting mechanics, all of the things which are like first-person shootery about it are not easy to go through. However, my girlfriend loves Mass Effect. She can't play it, but she loves watching it. She loves making the decisions. She loves going through that narrative. It's an interesting one, because for me and my partner with Mass Effect, we either play through it together, and I'll call her over when it's like, oh, there's decisions going on, and she'll sort of rush over and we'll go through that together. Or she's watched, it's one of those games that she's watched people play through on YouTube, because she's not good at the mechanics of it, but she loves engaging with the story and discussing those moral choices. So moral choices in games can be a really good way to get people involved in games who aren't interested. Be like, hey, come over and have a look. I know you're not interested in the shooting bit that we just had, but what do you think we should do with this moral choice? So, like, there are ways with complex games that you can get people engaged in certain aspects of them and sort of be like, hey, this is why I'm interested in this game. It has all these really interesting choices. Feel free to engage with those, even if you don't want to engage with the bits where I'm shooting a load of stuff in the face. So, yeah, that is my slightly rushed talk on games about, like, hey, people who aren't very good at games, how to make them play games and stuff. I'm sorry, that's very badly worded. I jumped into this a bit unexpectedly. So, yeah, thank you very much. Woo. Should I do the questions thing? Anyone got any questions? Oh, Alan has a question.
Well, if I get a chance to take it, I will. So I went on a date with another human being last week. Yay! Yeah, the guy in the Mega Drive t-shirt actually got a date.
Did you take the mic so you could tell everyone you
No. Okay, no, there's a question coming. So the question is that she doesn't like video games, and at some point we will need to broach the topic that I do. So if you could pick one video game that you would use to, I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but that's what I'm thinking of. One video game for somebody that doesn't like them at all, which would you pick and why?
Very good question. For me, I would say Broken Age Act 1 has been the one that I had the most success with my partner, sort of winning her over to the value of video games. Just talking a bit more in depth about it, as a point-and-click adventure, it was something that, going through it together for the first time, we were both able to, there were some challenges that, we were each better at solving. But particularly, it's a fairly short game, it's very simple to control, and it had an ending that was incredibly, brought up a lot of debate. And that was, I think, what sold her on the value of video games, was seeing a narrative where there was such an open to debate, interesting conclusion within such a short narrative. I think that's what caught her on, and she was like, oh, I want to play more of that. And that was the first time I'd really seen her actively look forward to the continuation of a video game. And I don't know if that would be the same for everyone, but for me, that was the example that really worked. So, yeah. Anyone else got questions? Any person? Asymmetric multiplayer games are an interesting one because they're very hard to get right. Like, there are a lot of games that will do things like, I'm trying to think of some bad examples. Mario Galaxy 2 is a good example of like how easily that can be done wrong, where it is like, hey, one person gets to be the main character jumping around and doing all these things, and the other person gets to point at stuff and maybe collect some stars. Like, it's very easy to go too far when trying to have a simplified secondary like mode of play that's not vital to the experience, but that is easier to do. Like, there are great examples like you've mentioned, but like there are a lot of examples that do it wrong, and like if you have a bad example of that and you give someone like, okay, you can play this aspect of the game, it can be really patronizing when they're like, you've given me the easy mode. And like that is the only problem. Like I'm blanking on examples. I've done a couple of games with my partner where she's been like, you have given me the easy mode for this and I don't like that, which can be the problem with it. I don't know, but there is definitely value if, you know, the game does it right. Anyone else?
So I make puzzle games, so I'm wondering, have you tried any puzzle games? Because one thing I've noticed is that if I get a single person in front of a game, they'll just, they'll play it briefly and they'll, it's too hard. But if I get a table of people playing at a pub, a lot of people who I wouldn't expect to be into it will actually be way more able to play it in that setting.
Definitely. I think a lot of the problem with like getting people who aren't into games is like getting them to try them in the first place. And like your example there is like once you've got a group of people who are all doing something together, it's very easy to convince like, hey, come over and join us. And like it takes away some of the pressure in that regard, where like if you are one of many people trying to work towards a common goal, there is no pressure to succeed, and like it's not all on that one person if they fail to accomplish it, which like can be a really welcoming thing for people, you know, wanting to start dabbling with video games. So there is definitely value to that. It's just like with any kind of game like that, it is a question of like if the person doesn't have the core knowledge of that genre already, like that can be a barrier. But I don't know. Anything else? Pardon? Yeah, thank you.